Mike Salavoie for Ribbon News, and today I want to discuss the housing crisis we are experiencing while the Liberals are promising thousands of new homes for the people to be able to afford a safe space to live.
Because getting a house into a home, building a strong future for yourselves, for your kids, should be something accessible to all families across this country, and more, it's just not.
Other companies who desperately want to build houses are being blocked to do so. Today, in 3 different reports, you will hear the nightmare story of a small private company that tried to do their work. This is probably one example of those who have suffered under these construction regulations. When it is not done by the Liberals, they will do everything they can to make things complicated. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre has spoken extensively about how gatekeepers are holding our country back. Across the country, at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels, increasing layers of bureaucracy and government institutions are expanding their power at the expense of companies trying to do their job and provide homes for the people. Government clearly want us to live in a tiny 80-foot square condominium, all concentrated together in the main city. But how about a private place in the suburb with land for growing food and having a little peace? These places are becoming harder to find because there are few developed areas. But condominium towers are being erected everywhere. Canada has a vast expanse of land, but no one has the right to exercise the right to build, often under the umbrella of climate change and environmental protection. While the multinational pollute without calculating and the elite use their private jet. But today, for the first part of 3, I discussed what businesses have to go through in order to get a construction project approved and all the obstacles. Jocelyn Burzwick, the president of the development company Sundance Construction, wants to build a project of many houses on the property. They are not at their first project, but this time is harder than ever. They are being blocked intensively by woke people who have infiltrated the system. A story which reveals a serious Canadian problem.
My name's Jocelyn Berger, and I am the owner of Sundance Construction. I've been in the construction business since 2008 professionally. I was a senior project manager. I've done huge projects for Manitoba Hydro at Kiosk and Kiwatnuk for water treatment plants, sewage treatment plants. I've done civil work with almost every single government department, both federally and provincially. So the Manitoba Water Services Board, both working for other contractors and for myself. So I've had a lot of experience in construction and in building, everything from residential to commercial to institutional to mega projects. I've done work on all of them. So I have a really good background in design and construction.
And so everything started with your project of 10 house in Sandy Hook, close to Gimli in Manitoba. Can you explain what was the project and what you needed to pass through to make your project approved, not only by municipality, but also by the provincial and federal level?
So for me, what's happened was that in 2019, I decided I wanted to create a subdivision. I wanted to do a housing subdivision. So I started working on this, and originally it was going to be for 26 houses, and it's still 26 houses eventually, phase 1, phase 2. So I started the application first by going to the RM at Gimli because I already had a developer's agreement on this property. I bought it with a developer's agreement. So I figured, okay, this is why I bought the property. It actually attaches to my own property where I live. So literally I walk up my back door and there's my development right behind me. And so I said to the Gimli, I sat down with them in 2019 and I said, how do I either amend my original developer's agreement or do I have to start this process all over again? And what steps are involved? So I went to the Gimli and asked them, what do you want to see from this development in 2019? I didn't get an answer from them until July of 2020. So from November to July of 2020, it took them 6 months to even give me an answer. Then at that point in time, I said, okay, what do I have to do to start this process all over again? So then I started with the preliminary engineering. I gave them a house design, told them what the concept would be. Then I sent that application off to our engineers just so they could go through the process. And then we had to go to a public hearing for the Gimli. So they do a public hearing, everybody comes to the public hearing and they can decide whether or not they are for the development or not. Well, we passed that public hearing. We had a couple of objections because people said that our area where we're in is Sandy Hook. They didn't want any more development. They didn't want any type of housing developments. I had a few people say to me during that process, they thought I was going to do low income housing because I was Aboriginal. They figured that because of my background, that was all I was capable of producing. So I had some pushback right at the very beginning. And then it kind of all just smoothed out. So the Gimli approved the subdivision. They said, yes, we're going to approve the subdivision. So that was first public hearing. So then we send off the engineer drawings, the application, the information on roads, sewer, water, all of that. And we send it off to community planning in Selkirk, and they have to approve it at that point in time. And then once that goes through circulation, so that has to go through, and they have 30 days to do it. And it's supposed to go from, after the first hearing, it goes to every provincial department. So that goes to Climate and Parks. It goes to Office of Drinking Water, Heritage in case for archaeology. It goes to the EIPD, so the local planning district. It goes to the RM, and they all make comments. So Tetranet, which is land titles, they all get to make a comment on this. Now, instead of this process taking 30 days, this process actually took another 6 months. It takes us to actually get through that process. After that, it goes back to the Gimli, and they say, okay, so you've done this process. We're going to let you continue the application. So they give me what's called a conditional letter of approval. So this conditional letter of approval says, and I got the final conditional letter of approval on May 5th, 2022. So we go through this whole long process to get to that point of pre-engineering, long-term discussions with the Gimli, discussions with every single provincial department, answering all their questions on sewer, water, all these components. It gets to May 5th, I get my letter, and then they say, okay, we need you to do two things. We need you to rezone this. So you have to go back to public hearing to rezone it. So I said, okay, I'll go back to public hearing and I'll rezone it. And then at that point in time, I have a whole bunch of conditions that I need to meet. So some of the conditions are really normal, like you have to have a drainage plan. You have to have a plan with Office of Drinking Water. You have to make sure that you do a follow-up with archaeology for habitat and heritage and make sure I don't have anything of archaeological interest, which I did. Then you have to go through all the other processes, making sure is that we've met everything for Climate and Parks in terms of water control license. What do they feel about my drainage plan? My drainage plan has to be done by a professional engineer in the province of Manitoba. Then I have to get my roads designed. Then I have to get the sewer and water systems designed as well. So I have to send all of this information into the province of Manitoba, which is community planning. And I did all of that. So we sent in all these questions we answered all their questions. We sent in the engineering. And this is supposed to be a really simple subdivision because I'm not connecting to municipal infrastructure. We're standalone. We can operate off grid, private roads, Nothing. I impact the RMA-Gimli in zero ways. Nothing. So this is like a no-brainer. And they need the housing because we have the massive housing shortage here. And they said that they're all in for this housing. So that's what I had to go through just to get to getting my subdivision approved. But then since the day that I got my approval, it's like every time I have to go back for a public hearing, say if I need a variance on one house, or I need a variance to be able to get my building permit sooner because I don't connect to any municipal infrastructure. Well, then what the RMA-Gimli does is that they say, well, even though you're already approved, we're just going to reopen the whole public hearing process, and we're going to let everybody come back in, and instead of actually just having a discussion about whatever variance you're here to deal with, they open it up to the public and say, okay, now you can come back into public hearing and you can readdress her actual approval. So if people who originally didn't want the housing development to go through, they can come back multiple times during the process, and every time they come back, they're allowed to engage in defamation. They are allowed to attack our company. They're allowed to attack us personally. They're allowed to do all of these things that aren't even allowed in a municipal meeting. The RMA-Gimli lets them do that. And so it's like this really strange process of where a developer who's already got an approved subdivision has to go through multiple series of public hearings just to get beat up publicly and to pay money back to the RMA-Gimli to go through this really huge combative process. It doesn't make sense. So I've had to jump through every single hoop at every single level. And every single time I do this, it costs us huge amounts of money. So we're paying for all this engineering. We're paying for our staff to be able to go out and do this. We're paying for additional surveying. We're paying additional fees that we have to pay every time we have to go through one more step of the process. But we had sold lots in the beginning when we got our initial approval. That said, specifically that the RMA-Gimli had to give me a developer's agreement within 90 days. That's law in Manitoba. That's municipal law. That's the Planning Act. The moment I get my conditional letter, you got to give me a developer's agreement in 90 days. And if you don't, then the RMA-Gimli or any RM in Manitoba would have to pay the developer delay damages, which is what we're doing. And that's another story that comes down later down the line. But so this is what we've had to go through. So it's like the RMA-Gimli, they approve these projects, and not just for developers like myself, but other developers are going through the same thing where they have to get a developer's agreement in 90 days, and they're waiting 18 months, 2 years. And there is no sense of hurry on the part of the RM. But not only is there no sense of hurry on the part of the RM, it's everybody else. Our MLA. So our MLA is a conservative, which is Derek Johnson. He's also the Minister of Agriculture. No, it's no concerns on that part at all. Then we go up to the municipal associations. Nobody there wants to hear anything. The municipal board, after multiple calls and actually citing the legislation to them, now they're like, yeah, we'll have to do an appeal and we'll have to deal with this because it's not right. But I had to push them multiple times, and I had to get a lawyer involved to be able to get them to actually move to do that. Ombudsman is no help at all. You know, they haven't even decided whether or not they're even going to pursue this at all. So they're just like, there's nothing we can do. They said is that if a government, either a municipality or a government department decides that they're not going to hurry something, they're just not going to. And it doesn't matter how much you are in the right, they just don't care. They literally don't care. And so that's what we've been going through. So I've had to do all of this to jump through all the hoops. So 2 years of jumping through hoops to get to an approval. And then now that I've got the approval, it's like I'm almost, back at square one, and I've had to fight over the last 9 months to be able to get to the point where, okay, I've met everything on their conditional letter of approval, but the RMA-Gimli is sitting there now. We're sitting almost 12 months, no developer's agreement. and they're not even making an effort to do the developers agreement unless I push it. They've given me 3 drafts so far, and each draft of a developers agreement that they gave me was incoherent legally. And I asked the question, did you have a lawyer prepare this? Because if you did, you should fire him. It was that poorly written. And I've been doing this for like years. My career is to read contracts. That's my job. If I don't understand a contract, what good would I be as a contractor?
If you think that Ribbon News is doing a great job and you like what we are doing and you want to encourage our journalism and you want to help us to cover some fee relating to our coverage, you can do so at rebelfieldreports.com. On this website, you can donate what you can, and in the same time, you encourage your best journalism. Thanks.